What if a single discovery could rewrite everything we thought we knew about human history? What if the oldest body ever found still had secrets locked inside his frozen DNA, secrets waiting 5,000 years to be heard? In the early 1990s, high in the icy Alps between Austria and Italy, two hikers stumbled upon something that would change archaeology forever. It wasn't treasure. It wasn't stone or gold. It was flesh, dark, leathery, and impossibly preserved. A man, half swallowed by a glacier, frozen in time. This is the story of Ötzi, the Iceman, the oldest intact human mummy ever found. And what scientists uncovered inside his DNA shocked the world. On that September morning in 1991, Erika and Helmut Simon were hiking a rugged trail in the Ötzi Alps. The air was thin, the wind biting. As the late summer sun melted the surface of the glacier, the couple noticed something protruding from the ice. At first, they thought it was a piece of equipment, maybe the remains of a lost climber. But as they approached, the outline became unmistakable: a head, a torso, a crooked arm. The skin was dark and stiff, the body astonishingly intact. No decay, no scavenger marks, just a man preserved by cold and time. The Simons assumed it was a recent tragedy. They called the authorities. But when scientists arrived and lifted the body from its icy tomb, the truth hit them harder than the mountain wind. Carbon dating confirmed it. This was no modern mountaineer. This man had died more than 5,000 years ago, during Europe's Copper Age. He was older than the pyramids, older than written history. His name would come from the valley where he was found, Ötzi. For archaeologists, it was like opening a time capsule that no one knew existed. A body, his clothes, his tools, all perfectly preserved. Every fiber, every wound, every thread told a story of life and death in a world long before nations or writing or cities. Ötzi was about 45 when he died, old for his time. He stood roughly 1.60 meters, weighed around 50 kilograms, and carried the marks of a life shaped by hardship. His bones were strong, his muscles compact. Decades of climbing and carrying had molded him into a man built for endurance. Yet his skin told a quieter story, one of pain. 61 tattoos, small lines and crosses etched near joints and along his spine. Not for decoration, but likely for relief. A form of ancient acupuncture, used to ease arthritis and muscle tension. His clothes were just as revealing. Goatskin leggings insulated his legs. A woven grass cloak shielded him from the wind. On his feet, leather shoes stuffed with dry grass kept him warm. Every detail had a purpose. Survival wasn't a matter of comfort but of precision. Among his belongings, one object stood out, a copper axe. The blade was green with age, but unmistakable. At a time when metal was rare and precious, this was a symbol of power. It meant status, skill, and danger. It meant this man was no ordinary traveler. But the ice had also preserved darker clues. A wound on his left hand, deep, defensive. Bruises along his ribs. And in his left shoulder, an arrowhead lodged near a major artery. He hadn't fallen. He'd been killed. Forensic analysis revealed blood from at least 4 other individuals on his gear. It seemed he'd fought, maybe fled, before dying high in the mountains. Whether he was a warrior, a fugitive, or a man betrayed, no one could say. But one thing was certain: he was hunted, struck down, and left to die alone in the cold. The glacier sealed him away, guarding his story for 5,000 years, until science was ready to listen. To archaeologists, Ötzi was already a miracle. But to geneticists, he was a time machine. His body contained the oldest complete human genome ever preserved. In 2012, an international team sequenced it for the first time, revealing shocking insights. The results didn't match what anyone expected. Early studies suggested he had light skin, brown hair, and ancestry linked to steppe herders who supposedly migrated to Europe centuries after his death. If true, that would mean everything we thought we knew about ancient European migrations was wrong. Documentaries, museum exhibits, and textbooks all rushed to celebrate this new theory. But not everyone was convinced. The technology of 2012 was young. DNA contamination was a constant risk. Could modern samples have mixed with his? For years, the question hung unanswered. Then, in 2023, science took another leap forward. Using new techniques and cleaner samples, researchers at the Max Planck Institute re-examined Ötzi's genome. The results shattered the old narrative. Those earlier findings, the steppe ancestry, the light skin, were wrong. Contamination had fooled everyone. We misunderstood this man for over a decade, one geneticist admitted. The real Ötzi, it turned out, was something far rarer, a genetic survivor of a population that had once thrived in Europe and then vanished in isolation. He wasn't a bridge between cultures. He was a remnant of one that time forgot. By this point in the story, you can see why his discovery changed everything. And if you love stories where history gets rewritten by science, make sure you subscribe to Unfiltered Nation, because the past still has a lot more secrets waiting to surface. When scientists rebuilt his genome in 2023, they also rebuilt his face, and the world was stunned again. For decades, museums had shown Ötzi as a fair-skinned, brown-haired man, looking almost like a modern European. But the truth was entirely different. The real Iceman had dark skin, much darker than any of us imagined, brown eyes, and almost no hair. He was balding before his death. The new face of Ötzi forced archaeology to confront a bias that had shaped its view of the past for generations. Ancient Europe wasn't pale and uniform. It was diverse, complex, and far more connected to the global human story than we once believed. But the DNA held more than ancestry. It carried illness, suffering, and survival. His genome revealed markers for heart disease, diabetes, and obesity, conditions we usually call modern. Yet here they were, in a man who lived 5 millennia ago. He was lactose intolerant, suffered from arthritis, gallstones, and even carried the bacteria that causes Lyme disease, making him the oldest known human to have it. It turns out pain has always been part of the human story. Ötzi's tattoos near aching joints may have been his way of fighting it, small acts of medicine carved in ink and courage. The new genome also revealed something extraordinary about his ancestry. More than 90% of his DNA came from Neolithic farmers who had migrated from Anatolia, what is now Turkey, thousands of years earlier. They brought wheat, barley, goats, and cattle, transforming Europe from wild plains into farmland. The other 8% came from ancient hunter-gatherers who had lived there long before. Ötzi's people were part of that first great wave of agriculture. They built settlements in the Alpine valleys and stayed there, isolated by mountains that became both their shield and their cage. Over generations, their isolation preserved their lineage but also weakened it. Low genetic diversity increased disease. By the time Ötzi lived, his people were a fading echo of that first farming civilization. Today, his closest living relatives aren't in the Alps but on the island of Sardinia, where isolation preserved the same ancient genes. In other words, Ötzi wasn't our direct ancestor. He was a branch that almost disappeared. Even in death, the Iceman kept teaching us, not just about the past, but about the fragility of life itself. Inside his body were parasites, infection, and the scars of struggle. His DNA was the oldest medical record ever written, showing that human suffering isn't a modern invention, it's part of who we are. And then there's the question that still haunts every scientist who studies him: how exactly did he die? His tools and unfinished bow suggest he was preparing for danger. His final meal, dried ibex meat, grains, and fat, was eaten in a hurry, like a man bracing for a long journey or a final fight. The ash in his lungs proves he sat by a campfire shortly before dying, maybe to rest, maybe to hide. Then came the arrow. A silent shot in the back, piercing his artery. He probably died within minutes, high in the mountains, surrounded by stone, snow, and silence. And there he remained. The glacier advanced, sealing him inside. Every bone, every fiber, every scar, perfectly preserved for 5,000 years. Waiting for sunlight, and for us. When you look at Ötzi, you're not just looking at a mummy. You're looking at the story of all of us, of migration, adaptation, and survival. His death froze a moment in time, but his discovery melted centuries of assumptions. For scientists, the most humbling lesson was this: the past is not fixed. It changes every time we learn to listen better. So what do you think? What other secrets might still lie hidden under the ice, waiting for the world to thaw enough to hear them? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if stories like this fascinate you, if you love seeing history through the lens of science and wonder, hit like and subscribe to Unfiltered Nation, where we uncover the untold stories that prove the world is still full of mystery. Because sometimes, the oldest discoveries are the ones that make us feel most alive.